I couldn't be happier to announce and introduce Ian Glazer, who is SVP of Product Management at Salesforce, who's going to be talking about Salesforce's journey with FIDO.
Thank you, everybody. It is an honor and a pleasure. This is my first Authenticate. I have participated from remote. It's the first time to be together with you all, and I'm really, really excited to do so. It's also a real pleasure to talk about the work that my peers and I have been doing over the last couple of years around really driving adoption of MFA. But little housekeeping. So Salesforce is a very different kind of company in the way we show up, in our values, and yes, in fact, those are our mascots. Now, let's get a couple things out of the way about that. Yes, we have mascots. Yes, they have all their own backstories and pronouns. No, they do not all wear pants. And that's just, you're gonna have to accept that. So today I wanna talk about our journey towards complete customer MFA. Two important words here. First, customer. This isn't a talk about how we enabled workforce for MFA. We did that about 7 years ago. It took a bunch of emails, a bunch of pizza, and we got about 98% of the company enrolled in about 24 hours. It was pretty cool, but we're not gonna talk about that. This is about our customers, and it's about our journey, right? So it's not so much about the results, although I will talk a little bit about that. It is more about things we learned along the way, and I think that telling has things for every enterprise doing any sort of large-scale identity program, whether it's MFA or not. And so onward, let's talk about this journey. It starts in the fall of 2019. That was the before times. If you don't remember when that occurred, there were dinosaurs. It was really a crazy time. And our CISO said, okay, pretty straightforward. Here's what's gonna happen. In about 3 months, every single one of our product lines, what we call clouds, will adopt a shared MFA service. And about a year later, every single customer is gonna use MFA for their logins to the Salesforce services. So 100% user adoption and 100% service adoption in 3 months, 100% user adoption in a year. And that's 1 year for literally like everybody. And I know there's been some laughter and you're thinking, what a low bar, what a simple thing to achieve. Oh no, wait, you're doing what I was doing, which is like, this is batshit nuts. Like how is this gonna happen? And I responded like any mature 5-year-old would do. I stomped my feet and I pretended like, if I just pretend like this guy didn't exist, it would all go away magically. Problem is, this guy told those folks. And once it's committed to the board and then you get two, because we have two CEOs who are like, this is the best thing since sliced bread, there was no way I was gonna get out of this one. Or the teams. Okay, so now, for a moment, pretend you're me. And you just got the CISO saying, all right, we're gonna do 100% MFA in about a year. Good luck. So like, what do? Shout it out. Shout it out. What would you do? Panic. Good. Others?
Update resume.
Update resume. That's a classic answer. What else we got?
Just quit.
Oh, just quit. Just out. Just boom. Okay. Although these are very lovely answers. They're all wrong. What you need to do is hire a writer. You need a writer because in Acts 2 and 3 of what's coming for you is the need to clearly communicate to non-identity people, to non-technical people about how things are gonna change and why it's better for them. And the person to do that is a writer. Now, while you're at it, you probably wanna get a data person because you're gonna wanna see how things are going in terms of different markets, geographic areas, different bands of tenant size, for example. So, step 0, get yourself a writer, get a data person if you can. Okay, next up, you're saying like, hey, sounds like a big program. I probably need a program team. Yes, correct. So we staffed our program with non-identity people. The people that are actually operating the MFA rollout program are not subject matter experts. Now, when this first began sort of coming together, I was deeply, deeply concerned about this because I thought that my team, as the subject matter experts, were gonna spend all their time explaining what identity is and not doing the work. Now, I was right. We spent a ton of time in the beginning of the program teaching the program teams what was identity, the basics of identity management, the basics of MFA, of SSO. But here's where I was wrong. That was the work. Because we had to take literally every one of those conversations and go talk to our customer base about it. So in the end, having a program team that was not staffed by subject matter experts was really a feature. It was not a bug. So if you have the opportunity, bring non-subject matter experts into this program. You're going to need them because the teaching of what they need to understand to operate the program is what your customers need to know. Okay, so got a program. Now we need to get commitment because we've said every cloud, every basically line of business needs to adopt this MFA service. Now, keep in mind, we're doing this in Q4 of our fiscal year. And we've got a bunch of general managers that run multi-billion-dollar businesses, and we are asking them to change plans mid-Q4. This is not a message that is necessarily super well received. Imagine that. But we had a little bit of an advantage. See, at Salesforce, trust is our number one value. It has been throughout the history of the company. And so work that is related to trust, like this MFA endeavor, well, that goes to the front of the list, goes to the head of the line. That's awesome. But sometimes GMs and big businesses kind of need more, in newspeak, persuading to do something. And that's where, like you would, we enlisted these folks again, right? Not only did we say, well, CISO said we got to do it. This is a board level program. Oh yeah, and Brett and Mark think it's the best thing since sliced bread. And we can have an offline conversation. You can see how that goes. But we used these folks as persuaders. These are really powerful stakeholders. They also held us really accountable at a very high bar, which was also kind of awesome too. Terrifying, kind of awesome. Okay, so we got the writer, we got the data person, we got the program, we got the plan. Oh, right, so the next thing we got to do is we've got to measure our progress, and we've got to kind of align a lot of different parts of this, what was going to become hundreds of people programming. The way we did it at Salesforce is something we call the V2 MOM. Now, V2 MOM stands for vision, values, methods, obstacles, and measures. Salesforce as a corporation is run by this, has been since day one. Works like this. A vision is pretty simple. Where do you want to be in a year's time? What's important, your values in that journey? How are you going to do it? What are the roadblocks you expect to see? And then how are you going to measure your progress along the way? Everybody at Salesforce writes a V2 MOM. Every program has a V2 MOM. When we do something new and big, we write a V2 MOM. So operationally, this is normative behavior inside our company, which is you want to go do something, anything, you write a V2 MOM. And so we have a whole cadence of business already ready for this new program because we show up and say, here's our V2 MOM, this is what we're going to do, these are the things that are going to get in our way, and it's processed well by the organization as a sort of bureaucratic entity. And this is important. If you're going to go do a big identity program, do not invent something new that feels alien to the organization in terms of how you gain alignment and how you measure. Try to find those cultural norms. Try to find those operational norms. That was really, really important for us and continues to be. Every quarter we update it. Every year we write essentially a new one. We think about what we want to do in the next year. Round about this time, I had one of many lessons. It's roughly February of 2019 at this point in time. So we've now progressed from the fall of, 2020. We expected at this point, the MFA service, that shared new service, has come online. Launched the MVP, and I am so excited for the team. And I wanted to write a note to all of our executives to get them to basically pile on kudos, to be like, great job, everybody, you built this great thing. And my boss stopped me. He's like, I don't think you should do that. I'm like, why? He's like, well, how many of the clouds, how many of the product lines are actually using it? None of them. He's like, so you're gonna go get kudos for doing nothing. I'm like, but service. No. instead of getting kudos, instead of getting piles on of kudos, I found myself in front of this CISO getting piled on for having missing features and no customer adoption. And so what I lost sight of was from sort of that tier of the enterprise, service delivery without adoption basically means no service delivery. You've got to show the adoption side of it. At the same time, the larger program team was learning a similar lesson. So we're sitting in February 2020. We don't have any cloud adoption of the new service because the new service just went live, okay? And we had started to see what kind of customer adoption we had for existing MFA capabilities where they lived. And it was really inconsistent. Where there was data, it wasn't in great quality. What the data that we could figure out wasn't showing us encouraging things. So let's remember that the original plan said everybody was going to have adopted internally in February of 2020, and our customers had another year. It was very clear at this point in time that was not going to happen. So we had to replan. So we replanned in February 2020. We essentially pushed out adoption about 9 months to the fall, and we pushed out customer adoption a year. This was not a great moment for the team. They took it hard, right? Because they had been operating around a plan that we had a shared goal, and we have really great people, really earnest, hardworking people, and replanning kind of took the wind out of their sails. And part of my job was to say, like, we should have been planning for the replan anyway. Like, there are always externalities. This does not negatively affect on the team. Better to be realistic about what you can do. Okay, flash forward a little bit. We've now gotten to the spring of 2020, and we are ready to start communicating out to our customer base what's about to happen. 3 major things. What are we going to do? Well, why we're doing it is we want to roll out MFA because it's the single biggest security control that you can roll out as a customer in partnership with a service provider to protect yourself, to protect your customers' data. Cool. When are we doing this? February 1, 2022. And then what are we doing? And this is an important choice. We said strong MFA. So time-based one-time password. You could use the Salesforce mobile app, which is a push-based contextual app, or WebAuthn, or SSO with MFA. No SMS OTP, no email OTP. Come fight me. And we had to get the word out. And we used everything imaginable just short of carrier pigeon. Whether it was email, it was in-app notifications, we published ebooks, we published how-tos, we published a really good FAQ, which you should totally steal because it's public. We even called everybody. Like, we literally called all of our customers to tell them this was coming. That's not enough. We also listened for a response. So we set up multiple channels in our Trailblazer community for people to ask us questions, to talk back. All of the teams in the field in our customer success group who are doing outreach, we're also bringing back data from them about what our customers were saying, what the sentiment was there, what were the challenges they were seeing. Now, it's a couple months after this, but we're due for our first wobbler. Okay, so in Salesforce culture, there are a couple of sort of leadership training groups, leadership training courses, and they all have a business simulation in them. You and your table mates essentially compete against other tables funding a fictitious company that happens to do SaaS software. It's weird, who knew? And through the course of 3 days, you all make investment decisions. And every day, there's 1 or 2 externalities that come and throw you off the game. They're called wobblers. And so culture in Salesforce can be like, yeah, we had a really great Q3 till this wobbler hit us. This wobbler, number 1, came in the form of our CISO noticing a tiny little thing. Just 2 words, right? We had been communicating out to our customers, you needed to do MFA or SSO. The CISO thought we were saying SSO with MFA. Yeah, laugh, John, because it wasn't your career. We had to clarify our communications with our customers. And it was a clarification, and this was the right thing to do. There was no way to avoid it. We had to go change what we were saying to our customer base. And although it was a clarification, What it felt like to our customers was that we moved the goalposts. We eroded their trust, and it took a long time to make that back. Simple as that. It was just, even though we had been briefing the CISO and the board and the executives, little things like that cause huge implications downstream, just what it's going to be. Okay, we've sort of recovered from that. The wheels are gaining traction, and some of that feedback we're getting, CISOs are, for example, saying like, this is awesome, because Salesforce is a pretty big part of my compute environment and my business environment, and you're giving me an excuse to go big with MFA inside. And I've really been looking for a vehicle for that, so awesome, thank you very much. Meanwhile, we were hearing more and more hard use cases. Customers who had a third party who admin their systems, their Salesforce systems. Robotic process automation, things like US testing suites like Selenium. It's really hard, really hard to jam MFA into some of those things. And it didn't stop there. Our ISVs, our huge ecosystem in the App Exchange, was really being challenged about some uncertainty, but also some direct concern about what that meant for their business. And our OEMs, same thing too. We have really special relationships with them. And the important point here is the hard use cases are always going to come up. There is no way, no matter how smart your team is, that you're not going to hit a hard use case along the way. An edge case that you thought, oh, no, never. No, it's going to happen. And so you've got to have the grace and the empathy and the flexibility to meet your customers where they are. Some of these cases, we still don't have a technical solution. That's okay. We'll still figure it out. There's other controls that we can employ. Now, things so far actually are going pretty well. We're seeing adoption numbers go up. Remember, we got that data person. Things are going really well. Raise a hand. How many people know who runs the DNS infrastructure for your organization? Okay, everybody else. Find these people. Bring them whiskey, bring them aspirin, bring them chocolate, hug them. Do whatever you need to do because DNS is really hard. And when DNS fails, when it goes squirrely, it has an enormous blast radius. Salesforce suffered a DNS-related outage. And part of that was it caught the MFA service. So MFA was unavailable. We fixed that. We addressed that. New controls are in place. But a couple weeks later, a regional failover process for our MFA service failed in a way we never expected it to. We didn't detect it, and so we had an outage. So within a short period of time, we had 2 major outages. And first off, we recovered all the services. Second of all, we learned from that as a team. We have strengthened our services. We strengthened ourselves. But the lesson here is if you think things are going well, just remember the universe has a sense of humor and something is going to come and kick you in the backside. It is a guarantee. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. Okay, so where are we today-ish? What we have seen, now keep in mind we are now on the other side of February 1, 2022. Customers are now contractually obligated to use MFA. What do we see? Well, what we really see is a tale of 2 tenants. We have one class of tenants which have really high SSO adoption, really low number of privileged or admin users as a portion of their total user population. And this is for us in the orders of thousands, tens of thousands of tenants. Then we have smaller tenants. Smaller user count, let's say sub 100 users, sub 50, sub 10 user. Lower SSO, lower MFA usage. Proportionately speaking, they've got a lot more privileged users or admin users relative to their general population. And here this is tens to hundreds of thousands of tenants for us. And while adoption in that first group is really good, the second, that lags. This is where we know we need to focus. Now, we have already called and reached out in all the ways you can possibly imagine and more. At this point, I think we've actually probably found some customers who were stranded on a desert island with our outreach for MFA and be like, oh, hey, by the way, you got to turn on MFA, and do you need a ride to the mainland? We are not going to do any more outreach. We're not going to outreach our way out of this. This is where we have to employ automation. This is where we have to need to start turning on MFA for customers who have yet to do so. That has consumed a great deal of my team's time because we know you don't just flip the switch and run. You might get away with it in a workforce scenario, maybe if you're feeling really cheeky, but you don't do this in a customer-facing scenario. So figuring out ways of how many tenants should we enable? What's the support impact if we do that? What are the ways that we do that without breaking their business processes? What kind of grace periods do we provide? All of this has gone into the soup to figure out what we are doing. The beginning of which will start to happen for our smallest tenants. Those are tenants with 1 to 10 users, and this will start in January of this coming year. And then we'll continue to march through there. And that's just turning it on, sort of org-wide. We will then make it fully mandatory, i.e. an admin cannot turn it back off about a year from that. It's gonna take us a while to do this so we don't impact our customers overly, and we don't overly impact our own business processes, like support. That long tail, right? These customers who have challenging use cases, like you've got to find ways to do that. And especially this long tail of smaller tenants, folks that don't necessarily have dedicated admin. That poor person is doing 3 other services that they were never really trained to do. They're just trying to figure it out as they go. You got to find ways to address that long tail. So today, standing here, I kind of like the 100% mandate. Would I have wished it was delivered in a different way? Yeah, absolutely. But I really like it. Let me explain. At the end of our fiscal year, we had approximately 80% of our monthly active users using MFA or SSO. Double-clicking a little bit, and this is in our core business, our core platform, which is what I tend to oversee. The majority of those are using Salesforce Authenticator, followed by time-based one-time password, and then WebAuth and roaming, so hardware tokens. And this platform tends to have more B2B type interaction models, if you will. Our non-core platform, so our other clouds, a little bit different of a mix. Time-based passwords still very, very popular. You see different kinds of things here. Recovery codes, for example, temp token making an appearance. But this is what it looks like for a 30-day rolling period. I sampled this in September, right before the slides had to be due. Okay, this may seem dumb, but obviously 100% is greater than 80%. And that's important because 80% is pretty darn good, right? Without the 100% mandate, we'd have printed the t-shirt, thrown the party, and probably walked on and done other things. Because don't worry, there's plenty of other things for us to do. But the 100% goal forces us to continue to innovate. It forces us to find ways, not just technical ways, to meet our customers where they are. And it continues to drive awareness of the importance of these kinds of controls throughout the company. And that's an important lesson. So yeah, I kind of like these impossible goals because it really drives some pretty magical outcomes. We have been on this journey since early in 2019, which is in the before time. I don't know about you, but one of the things that did not make it through COVID with me is the sense of time. So I think that's like 80 billion years ago. Feels like it. And if you're gonna bring a group of hundreds of people on a journey, let alone impact millions of people, you gotta kind of remind yourself like, why the hell are we doing this thing again? At the end of the fiscal year, which is in February, we had about 14 million now new that we had added with MFA and SSO. Because our customers have adopted MFA, we see a dramatic reduction in the detection of account takeover. This is incredibly important. All of this work, as I tell the teams, not just the subject matter folks, everybody. You were part of a program that drove some incredible results. You rolled out MFA for a $100+ billion company. That is amazing. That's resume building work. But as an identity practitioner, there's a knock-on effect. Those people, those millions of people, go home because in their day jobs, they are habituated to use MFA. It comes up somewhere in the daily process of them doing their work. So they're used to it. Now, look, I know that not all 14 million are going to go home and give grandma a YubiKey or give them a Top P app. But they're going to talk to their friends about it. They're going to talk to their family about it. And some percentage of them, that's going to start to bleed out. They're going to use it in their daily lives, protect what's important to them. That knock-on effect of essentially those people then seeding others to start using MFA, that, as an identity practitioner, that's what makes this journey really worthwhile. Thank you so much, everybody. For the record, I have no idea where we are on the timing, so.
You could stick around. Does anyone have an urgent question?
That gentleman seems to have an urgent
Paul, can
question.
you grab the mic from the back for me?
You can yell real loud, I'll repeat it.
Literally 1 minute for questions.
Go.
So don't have.
Yep. Yes. Yep. So let me just summarize the questions for the folks streaming. So the question basically is like, hey, you talked about a bunch of stuff that you all did, but like your customers have heterogeneous environments. How did they accommodate this? What did you see happening and how did you help them through that process? Paraphrase. Couple of answers there. One, we described what minimum bars were of types of authenticators. What we wanted to stay out of the business of was saying this specific vendor or that specific vendor, because we would be in a morass of always evaluating very specific deployment types. Number one. Number two, when we saw patterns arising of combinations of technology that customers, especially in different non-US markets, were using, for example, domain joined devices with certificates and endpoint management plus trusted IPs plus a few other controls, we said, we'll give you an equivalence, essentially a waiver. And we also knew customers were going to take time to roll out that technology, so we gave people time-based, essentially waivers to continue their rollout of SSO, because we got a lot of people saying, I want to roll out SSO a little bit more, but I need 6 more months. We also granted those too. And I can tell we're out of time.
We're out of time. Can you all join me in thanking Ian for a great presentation?
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so we're just going to take 2 minutes to let folks get to their next session, and then we'll kick off the next session. Thanks.